Welcome back to the Contrarians. Today, I would like to open our episode with a reading from the sermons of the Reverend William P. Corgan Jr., in which he says, Shakedown 1979. Cool kids never have the time. On a live wire right up off the street, you and I should meet. Junebug skipping like a stone, with headlights pointed at the dawn. We were sure we'd never see an end to it all. Amen.
Right. Amen.
And in this episode,
Amen.
We're going to go over our top 10 songs from the year 1979. So it's a very loosely formatted show. I look forward to seeing how everybody has interpreted the brief. And we're going to go around as I have people on my screen, which means starting with Martin. Martin,
okay.
Clue us in on 1979.
Well, I remember 1979, we keep talking about it as a year where hard rock and heavy metal took kind of a dip. A lot of our big heroes were away. And as I made this list, I did it my usual way. I went through, a list of all the albums that came out in 79. It was just popping in songs, above, below. And really, I've only got one song in here from my usual space. It's kind of interesting. So, number 10, I'm going to go with the Boomtown Rats. Someone's Looking at You. Fine Art of Surfacing is my favorite Boomtown Rats album. I just love it. It's poppy. It's ambitious. There's a lot going on. It's better than Tonic for the Troops. It makes Tonic for the Troops sound like a demo of Fine Art of Surfacing. The whole album is full of great songs. It's beautifully recorded as well. So that's my first one. I don't have a physical of that anymore. So, anyways, moving on. Number 9, XTC. I'm going to go with Making Plans for Nigel. It's just a very interestingly put together song. It's kind of tribal and slow. It's got that kind of repeater effect riff. A lot of this album is pretty herky jerky. I would never pick too many of the songs off of this as being that great, but it was a smash single for a reason. It's not even my favorite XTC album, but I just love XTC, and I think that was a good choice for that year. Next, I'm going with the very evil Stranglers, The Raven. The title track, The Raven, second song on the album. It is so creepy and occulty, and the band were all on drugs. They were all doing heroin at this time. You got the long ship on the back. This whole album I've called one of the scariest albums of all time. And The Raven is just melodic and dark, and Hugh is singing kind of in a whisper, and there's this really enigmatic lyrics, and it's kind of a driving song. It's got the regular Strangler sound. Next, I'm going with a band I'm seeing on Monday here in Toronto, The Damned, Machine Gun Etiquette, with I Just Can't Be Happy Today. There's a lot of great songs on here, but none that I would put up. I'd put this album high on my list, but not too many songs from it would be good enough to make the list. But I Just Can't Be Happy Today is just a good, again, it almost sounds like the Stranglers. It's kind of like a dark, rumbling, melodic, noisy sort of tune. Great lyrics. The verse kind of gets kind of weirdly melodic and mellow. Next, I'm going with Thin Lizzy, Waiting for an Alibi. I was thinking of going with Got to Give It Up, but Waiting for an Alibi, I think in my heart as time moves on, I think I like it more. It's just such an undeniable song. There's a few on here that almost could have made the list. And then I'm going to go with I'm going in order, by the way. So these are rising to the very best song of 1979. So we're now at number 5. I'm going with Feed the Enemy from Magazine. Secondhand Daylight, the Pink Floyd of post-punk. This is such a dark, scary, interesting, decadent band. And it's beautifully recorded. It's very atmospheric. I think they're kind of like better than Joy Division in that they give you so many more cool things than Joy Division does. And then you've got that weird gatefold in it, right? Where they're all stretched out. Good old Howard Devoto there. So that's really cool. Next, I'm going with Weekend Love from Golden Earring, No Promises, No Debts. Love this band. This is my favorite period of the band. I love Heartbeat on here. Weekend Love is just such an exquisitely written, cool song. I wish the Rolling Stones would cover it. It's that kind of song. But there's other good ones on here as well. Tiger Bay is the one heavy one on here. Delight is really good too. Just a cool poppy hard rock album. My favorite period of the band is is the 2 albums either side of that one. Next, I couldn't find my physical of it. I do own it, but Graham Parker from Squeezing Out Sparks, Discovering Japan, the opening track, love it to death. Just such a great Springsteen family type of vibe band, pub rock. Way better, utilitarian for me than Elvis Costello. It's anthemic, it's heavy enough, it's well recorded. Number 2, second greatest song of all of 1979 is TV is King from the Tubes Remote Control. I love a lot of songs on here, but that one in particular, just a beautiful lyric, vocal melody, arrangement, just a great poppy song, not very hard, just a really sort of inspiring kind of message and even sort of situation with how the chords are arranged and stuff. And last, I'm going with the Jam, Thick as Thieves. Love the Jam to death, and this is my favorite album of theirs. There are so many great songs on here. I literally had 4 or 5 that I could have picked from here, and I wanted to pick something. But yeah, that's my number 1, Thick as Thieves. Just going to give you some honorable mentions real quick. Ian Hunter, Just Another Night. Van Halen, Light Up the Sky. Scorpions, Love Drive. Led Zeppelin, Carousel Alhambra. Ted Nugent, Paralyzed. Gang of Four, I Found That Essence Rare. Gamma, Fight to the Finish. David Bowie, Boys Keep Swinging. New England, Don't Ever Want to Lose You. Iggy Pop, New Values. AC/DC, Touch Too Much. Rainbow, Lost to Hollywood. The Clash, Train in Vain. And Blue Oyster Cult, The Vigil. For Matt.
Okay, well, I was going to say interesting that there's no heavy metal on your list, but they're all honorable mentions, so we got it in there somehow.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's a hell of an introduction to 1979. Matt, let's go over to you. What was your 1979 like?
Okay, well, I'll start off. There's a couple of songs that if you didn't look too closely, you might think that they were sort of fantasy inspired, but they're not. So first one is Toto, Hydra, the song from the album Hydra. Lyrically, it's really Hydra and the dragon lyrics are just metaphorical. It's more of a urban city night type theme to it, but it's unfashionably progressive for 1979, and the album doesn't do as well. But I love that song. Love all the vocal arrangements and that kind of just the right amount of progressiveness. And then my next one would be Molly Hatchet with the great Frank Frazetta album cover of Dark Kingdom. And again, Molly Hatchet, we've talked about this on other shows. They look heavy and they look like they're fantasy oriented. Of course they're not. But the song Flirting with Disaster is about as heavy as they get. And that is a great rocker. And I still enjoy that to this day. So that would be my number 9.
Come on, Matt. Beating the Odds is a heavier song than Flirting with Disaster.
It is, and either one's that heavy, right? Like in the grand scheme of things, they're still oversold on the heaviness. Then for my next pick, a song that I actually, when I first heard it, I interpreted it differently, and I didn't think it was like sci-fi oriented, but it really is, which is Tubeway Army. So Our Friends Electric. I kind of always, it's this really cold synth-driven song. Gary Newman, of course, is the main driver on it, and then subsequent releases he would just be billed as Gary Newman with the same players playing with him. And I took it as, this sort of cold, lonely thematic. And I think those themes are in there, but it is truly a sci-fi story. So it's like a Philip K. Dick inspired, electric humans, android prostitute comes to visit. So Gary Newman had a kind of a whole full sci-fi story in it. And I just love how cold and it is. It doesn't really have a chorus or anything, but I love all the synth and his vocal delivery. Okay, my next one is Philby by Rory Gallagher. Nick had talked on another show when we did favorite lyricists and included Rory Gallagher on there, and he's such a different type of blues-oriented guitarist in that he is a lyricist who will go into things that are not typical blues topics, and he does a lot of like private eye noir spyish type things. And so Philby referenced here is referencing to Kim Philby, the British spy who was spying for the Soviet Union, friends with Miles Copeland, the father of Miles III, and Stuart Copeland. Right, so a lot of cool musical connections. But it's got great Rory Gallagher guitar work, but with a cool lyric and a very riff-oriented song, which not which some of his are, and always sound good when he does it.
That's got a real rocker on it called Just Hit Town, right? Real heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got Bad Penny.
Bad Penny, yeah.
I mean, right, so you get Bad Penny and Just Hit Town back to back on side 2, which is pretty smoking. It's more of one of his most rocking albums. Okay, so then my next one is No Surprise by Aerosmith, from Night in the Ruts. And, it's pretty well documented how they were disintegrating at this time. Joe Perry Lee's in the middle of it. They've got a lot of the songs written, but they can't get Steven Tyler to write the lyrics. He's, blocked for 2 months, and then in one night, it comes to him to write the origin story of Aerosmith, and he totally delivers it good. It's got all the cool Steven Tyler play on words type things that he does when he's at his best, and it really works great. And I get the lyrics are funny, right? Situation fetal, vaccinate your ass with a phonograph needle, and all that kind of stuff. It really works well. Okay, and then my next one, Martin, you talked about the Vigil for Mirrors. I'm going to go with, because I did think someone might pick that one, so I'm going to go with The Great Sun Jester. So where we had songs at first that looked like they might be fantasy-oriented or sci-fi-oriented. Of course, this is a collaboration with a genuine fantasy sci-fi author, with Michael Moorcock. It's the first of the 3 songs that Eric Bloom does a remote collaboration with Michael Moorcock. He collaborates also with his old Lost and Found bandmate, John Trivers, to come up with the music. And you get this kind of almost pomp rock, majestic, fairly progressive-ish in terms of maybe just the scope of it, but feel and lyric-wise song on the Vigil. And you get, on Great Sun Jester, and you get Eric Bloom a chance to shine on an album where Tom Werman was not as excited to work with him as he was with Buck Dharma on vocals. Okay, and then next one, Blackfoot. They have their Strikes album. It's the first of their classic trilogy of Animal cover albums, which to me are the 3 best Blackfoot albums. I'm going to go with Highway Song. It kind of becomes their Freebird or their Green Grass and High Tides. It's got the build up at the end where it increases in speed and you get all the guitar solos, and becomes their concert closer from then on out. I always love Blackfoot. That's my favorite Southern rock band. And then I'll go with AC/DC, and I'm going to go with Beating Around the Bush. Bon Scott, top of his game. Sadly, the last game he gets to play. But I love the way he's just spitting out the lyrics of a man done wrong, and this kind of that herky-jerky rhythm that he delivers all the lyrics, and really good. And it's kind of in the tradition of riff raff, where it's built around this really cool, fast riff for the song, and always love Beating Around the Bush. Okay, my top 2. Gonna go from the Cars Candy-O album. It's my favorite album of 1979. And I'm going to go with It's All I Can Do. You get the beautiful Ben Orr vocals on this song. It's got Rick Ocasek. I think the perfect blend of when he does well, where he has the verses that are kind of like with quirky, obscure lyrics, and then the much more simple on the chorus. I love the distorted heavy rhythm guitar that's really low in the mix on the second half of each of the verses. You got Elliot Easton with a really cool guitar tone on his guitar solo, and a rising keyboard line in the second half of the verses. So a perfect pop song. And then my last one by the only band that matters in 1979, The Clash. At least if we take the December 79 UK release date for London Calling. And my favorite from that one is The Card Cheat. So it's got a Mick Jones vocal, really melodic, like the way he does like Stay Free. And it's got a very big sound. They recorded the whole thing twice, right? So they record the whole song and then they repeat it, recording every single instrument twice. It's got horns, it's got piano. Really can't hear any guitar in there. But I love lyrically the way it starts, kind of at the micro with a cheating card player, and then it pans back to, some sort of statement, maybe around political, maybe colonialism, got the 100-Year War to the Crimea, and in the service of the king, and then a king and the king in the cards, right? So they can make that nice connection. And That's why my number one is The Clash, The Carchi.
Sweet. Very nice.
Okay. So I think one thing we've already seen is there was a tremendous variety of music available in 1979. All right, let's go. Let's go across the pond to Phil. Phil, tell
Right.
us about your favorite songs from 1979.
Right. Well, once again, thanks for having me, guys. It's really great. It's really great to be in the amongst all you great music swamis, as Martin always says. Uh, Matt already mentioned two of mine. I was very pleasantly surprised to see you mention indeed Rory Gallagher and Top Priority. We don't talk enough about Rory Gallagher. He is one of the really great unsung heroes, guitar heroes of his generation. He did everything. He did bluegrass, he did hard rock, he did blues, he did slide guitar. He even did a little bit of some sort of proto heavy metal to some extent. And for me, the song from here is Follow Me. I absolutely love that song because of it has this driving guitar, but it's also really melodic, both on the vocal melody and on the guitar. It became a staple in his concerts. And this is indeed, as Matt said, one more very like hard rockin' album, which came right after Photo Finish, which is also one more of those kind of more hard rock albums. He also did a good number which were more blues, bluegrass, acoustic, singer-songwriter. But for a while, he dabbled in something that I would call proto heavy metal even. So follow me from this one. You also mentioned AC/DC, and indeed my favorite one is also Beating Around the Bush. I love it when AC/DC do all these puns and sexual innuendos. I find it is a bit childish, but at the same time, I find it very funny. I just laugh out loud every time with the lyrics. Indeed, I absolutely love AC/DC when they're at their fastest. So Beating Around the Bush, Riff Raff, Shake a Leg, or more recently, even Demon Fire. I absolutely love it when they play faster stuff like, of course, uh, Let There Be Rock, etc. Whole Lotta Rosie. Even the more like boogie stuff, like Rocker from Dirty Deeds, right? So yeah, Beating Around the Bush, that's number two. I'm not going in any specific order here, so a bit random. Martin also mentioned Led Zeppelin, so Carousel Alhambra, of course, for me. Their second longest song, longest epic. And I love Led Zeppelin. I mean, I love Led Zeppelin in general, but I love them even more when they stray away from the blues and they do this more experimental, sometimes more quirky, interesting stuff with the almost proggy but very playful, like imitating the music that you get from a carousel, right? So the keyboards are really way ahead in the mix by John Paul Jones, who really shines on this album, which also came out. When was this out? On the 22nd of August of 79. So this one clocks in at 10 minutes. And yeah, I think that the only problem with this song is maybe on concerning the songwriting, where you can really hear certain parts, how all the parts are kind of connected, but you can hear the parts where it's like a suture, of one part that's stuck to the other, kind of. So it doesn't flow seamlessly, but still, it's an exceptional tune, very proggy in some way, very interesting, very quirky, and from an album which I ignored for a very long time because of the critical consensus, which had largely influenced me. Next, I have to go with Pink Floyd, of course, and The Wall. Pink Floyd for me are maybe the greatest band of all time. I don't know. And I will go with the opening track, In the Flesh, which I know annoys Martin a bit. In the Flesh, question mark, right? As though you have to actually ask the question. Absolutely love this one. It gives you the feeling of a stadium rock anthem with that amazing riff, which has like descending and bending chromatic riff. And it's where apparently the character of the story, who is called Pink, he comes to life on this song. Is a reference to both Roger Waters with his autobiographical elements, but also Syd Barrett. where he gives a concert suddenly where he unexpectedly performs his life story. So, he comes up with that lyric of, "Hey, you thought you might like to go to the show," etc. I absolutely love the Roger Waters at his very theatrical. I think that's where he kind of what was missing from Pink Floyd after Roger left, which was that kind of interpretation of lyrics that Roger brought, which was more ironic, sarcastic. He brought characters to life. He had a certain theatricality about him. He still does to this very day, I think. So Pink Floyd and In the Flesh. And now I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'm going to choose one of the most prolific artists of all time. Of course, Frank Zappa in 1979 released, well, two albums, but technically two albums, but actually it was four albums. Joe's Garage has three parts. And then before that one, he released Shake Your Booty. So I'm going to go from Shake Your Booty with Dancing Fool. I like Zappa when he is at his, let's say, more commercial, poppy. The Frank Zappa hits are really great. And you can get there a lot of the humor, the spoken word, the incendiary lyrics, which are poking fun at many establishments and many ideas around like American Puritanism and the church and music industry. But it's a cool, fun one. It's a short track. But I like even more from Joe's Garage one deep track, which is Fembot in a Wet T-shirt, which I think is a dig at the groupies. It's something to do with groupies, I think, from that crazy concept album, which somehow is very reminiscent of Genesis' Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and how it is very surreal and takes you down a very strange rabbit hole of crazy encounters. And it's actually a rock opera because there are so many characters. There's a whole cast of characters. And I really like this track more because it represents that side of Zappa that I prefer, which is the more jazzy, atonal, influenced by Igor Stravinsky, where you get all the humor and the kind of poppy rock blues bits, but then suddenly it gets really strange, jazzy with the harpsichord and the, what's it called? Basically the atonal jazz, essentially. That's what I really, really like about Frank Zappa. Then I have to go with not an album, but an EP. Maybe it's the most important EP from 1979, and that, of course, is the Soundhouse Tapes by Iron Maiden, with a rare lineup, which we hardly ever saw later. So that would, of course, have Steve Harris on the bass and Dave Murray on the guitar. But apart from that, you had Paul Kearns also on second guitar, Doug Sampson on the drums, and of course, Paul Di'Anno on vocals. And this is really, like a first good, solid indication of what new wave of British heavy metal was about, which is this kind of very punkish, British sounding rock, punk, if you like, but you can feel that it's taking you somewhere else, which is essentially into this territory of new wave of British heavy metal. So yeah, I really love this one. I grew up listening to it as a kid. I was really enamored with the Di'Anno period before I started getting more into Bruce Dickinson. And I really love this song for that kind of wah-wah sound on the opening riff, on that melody. And just the twang in the voice of Paul Di'Anno, absolutely love that. And just how primitive it sounds. Iron Maiden later on became more refined. They displayed more musicality and more of the prog edge that Steve Harris is also known for. But here it's just like rough and raw and just really heavy, but also has that kind of punk edge to it, which combined those two, I think it really makes for a really great combination. And then I'm gonna go with the album of Camel called I Can See Your House From Here, which apparently is a reference to that joke where Jesus is on the cross and he says to Peter that he can see his house from up there. The cover shows this astronaut on some kind of cross looking down on Earth. I don't understand. I don't know exactly why they went for that. But anyway, the opening track, Wait, is really beautiful. I'm not a huge fan of more commercial poppy Camel. I prefer their first 4 or 5 albums. But this track in particular is really beautiful. It has all the hallmarks of what made Andee Latimer for me, a real guitar hero, an unsung guitar hero, and it is still very prog, but it balances perfectly both kind of tendencies. It is sort of turned towards the 80s prog bands and still that early kind of 70s attitude to prog rock, which I really like. So yeah, Camel and from the album I Can See Your House From Here. And then let me see. I had only prepared for 6 albums for some reason, but I will definitely go also with Love Drive, Scorpions. Not a huge Scorpions fan, at least not after Uli John Roth. But I do have to say that Holiday is a beautiful song. I do have to say that the ballads of Scorpions, the big hits, Still Loving You, Holiday, etc., are a little bit cheesy and corny, but there is something very irresistible about them. And I really like Holiday. I like the way it becomes heavy in the middle where you don't expect it. And the twin guitars are exceptional, of course. And since we're heading more into heavy metal territory, I guess I should mention also Motorhead with Overkill. And I will also go with Thin Lizzy as well. And of course, from Black Rose, I do have to go with the closing track on Royce and Dub, which again represents that side of Thin Lizzy that I prefer more, the slightly more complex, epic type where they combine the folk elements with the twin guitars, and it's kind of more adventurous. I really like Thin Lizzy when they do that, like with Emerald, for example, to give another example. How many am I in right now?
Yeah, one more. One more.
One more. Yeah, and I guess damn, I haven't actually thought this enough. Yeah, I guess I could also cheat again a little bit and go with a live album and go with Live Killers by Queen and Killer Queen. I mean, many of these songs they sounded even better on the live version, to be honest. So, yeah, those are my choices.
Nice. Good job.
Yeah.
All right, Phil. Lots of variety there. I am seeing a very interesting theme coming up here, which I'm not going to comment on yet because somebody may prove me completely wrong. But let's go now to Kevin. Kevin, tell us about your favorite songs from 1979.
Good to see you guys. It's been a while for me. This is kind of almost a part 2 for me. We did an episode a while ago of top 5 songs of your birth year, and 1979 is the year I was born. So I tried not to double up on anything, but we got 5 more, so I have a nice variety. Let's jump right into it. Number 10 would be off this album, and I went with Sure Know Something. I love that bass line by Gene. Just a cool kind of groovy song. And I think Paul's vocals were really great on this album too, and it shows on that album and that song in particular. Next one is from these guys, the Angels, off the No Exit album.
Excellent. Yeah.
I went with Can't Shake It. If you don't know the song, you might have heard it from Great White because they covered it amongst several others of theirs. Just a great, good pub rock, emphasis on rock song, good driving song.
Yeah.
Good band. Next, off Candy O, I went with Dangerous Type, last song. I always dug that song. I'm not a huge Cars fan, but I always dug that song. I love how you can, as most Cars songs, especially that one, but the first 4 or 5 notes, you can tell it's a Cars song. But that one's the longest song on the album. There's a little more guitar on it, which I always love Elliot Easton's guitar work. And it's just prototypical Cars. Let's see, where are we at? Number 7. Martin mentioned this song already, The Vigil. Not my favorite album by Blue Oyster Cult, but I do really like a couple songs on there, and especially the visual. It seems a little more spacey, a little more proggy than the rest of the album. Some good, nice, mellow guitar solos there by Buck too. Really like that song. This album was also mentioned, and I went with Train Train. I always go back to that song on that album. That's just perfect Blackfoot to me. You know, just quick, nice, simple riff. The little slide guitar there solo and the like distorted harmonica, whatever that thing is on the end. I love that song. I love that band too. Surprised no one mentioned this album yet. This is number 5, and I went with I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide. This is, of course, the Guayo album from ZZ Top. Just exudes cool to me, that song. You know, they're it's like kind of getting ready, going out on the town. I've got, you know, pocket full of change. You know, it's almost like just got paid, but just exudes cool. Nice groove, and then it speeds up there at the end. I like that little the guitar part and the bass part at the end. This album's been mentioned a few times already. And I went with Bone to Bone, Coney Island Whitefish Boy. Just fast rocker from Aerosmith. I think everything, and an album that's kind of, you know, regarded as the band falling apart, that song that really kind of came together. Although I think the whole album is pretty good, actually. Great vocals from Steven Tyler, kind of that shout rap that he kind of does. You know, he's not really singing that much on that song. He's sort of screaming and shouting. And then some great guitar work in the solos. Number 3, off of this album, I went with Eyes of the World. It always struck me it's the second song on the album. It's kind of like the perfect opener. But of course, you got All Night Long as the opener. But dramatic, great keyboard work by Don Airey. And you get that great, you know, kind of Middle Eastern tinged guitar solo from Richie Blackmore on that. And then I love the vocals from Graham Bonnet on the whole album, but especially that song and the great melody he puts to it. It's really good. Don't know if anyone's going to have this on their list, but number 2, Head East from the Different Kind of Crazy album. A weird album cover, but I went with the song If You Knew Me Better. Kind of a breakup song. Lyrics are really good. Lyrics to me, I only pay attention if they're really bad or really good, and this is a really good version. And it's sort of a builder of a song, and it gets sort of in the verses, his tone gets almost angrier and angrier, and then the chorus really mellows out. It's really beautiful. It's really a beautiful arrangement. It's a nice guitar solo there in the middle. Just a beautiful song. And then last, I couldn't decide on this album if I wanted to go with the first song or the last song. And to me, I always go back to the last song off of Gillan, Fighting Man. Just a great song. Awesome keyboard work by Colin Towns. He's all over this album. But yeah, and then nice that the keyboard solo leads into a nice guitar solo by Bernie Torme, and then that leads into a nice kind of high pitched scream from Ian Gillan. That just a beautifully arranged song too. It's 7.5 minutes, kind of a slow builder, but yeah, it's just great. That's it.
Okay.
Well, you hit one that I almost forgot. I should almost put that on my list and knock something else better off. But actually, Mr. Universe from that album has definitely got to be an honorable mention.
Yeah, Mr. Universe was neck and neck with Fighting Man. But
okay, we're starting to see a little bit of overlap. I expect that from the Contrarians, but you guys are sticking with my theme. So there's 2 more people who might possibly spill it before I reveal what my theme is. So let's go on to Parish. Parish, let's hear about your favorite songs from 1979.
Okay, well, before I start, I'm going to just say that 1979 is actually my favorite year for music. It's the year I turned 16, it's the year I met the future Mrs. Parish. I had 3 jobs at the time, and all 3 jobs when I'm buying singles and albums and seeing live bands. So music was a big part of my 1979. The first band, I don't know if they actually made it across to you guys, the Undertones. So the Undertones were Northern Ireland's version of the Ramones, very big over here. They had some really big hits, such as Jimmy Jimmy. Teenage Kicks is probably their most famous song. But I'm going to pick a song that came out as a single in the summer that was called You've Got My Number, Why Don't You Use It, which is a very fast-paced sort of teenage angst song. But if you like the Ramones and you don't know the Undertones, they're almost a power pop version of the Ramones, really. And very, very few of their songs are more than 2 minutes, so it's easy not to get bored with them. The second one I'm going to go with is from this album, 9 Lives, REO Speedwagon. And I'm going to go with the last track, Back on the Road Again, which I think is the heaviest song that REO Speedwagon ever did. It's actually not sung, it's sung rather by it's sung by Gary Richrath, who's the bassist. As I say, very heavy, got a great riff. At the time, I was hoping it was going to be the sound for the future of REO Speedwagon, but it obviously didn't turn out to be, as the next one that came along was High Infidelity. So clearly wasn't the case. But nonetheless, I think a really good song. The next one is a song written by Elvis Costello, recorded by Rockpile, but released as Dave Edmunds. So it's off this album, Repeat When Necessary. It's a song called Girls Talk, which was a single, sort of very poppy. I suppose a little bit sort of rockabilly, which was out at the time with bands like the Stray Cats, but a very, very commercial song. And I think probably the best song that Rockpile ever did. My next one has already been mentioned, but it brings back a lot of memories for me, because 1979 was the year of the Newmanoid. And if you don't know what the Newmanoid was, it was the followers of Gary Newman. And most of my friends were Newmanoids. And what that meant was they dressed up like Gary Newman. They had the white makeup, the eyeliner, dyed blonde hair, black jumpsuits, and even went to school like that, to the point where the headmaster had to compromise and say that they could come dressed like that as long as they wore a school blazer. So that was the compromise to allow them. And the song is, as already mentioned, Our Friends Electric, which to me was the very first sort of big synthesizer sounding song. Got to number 1 in the UK, and I was a big fan, although never a Newmanoid. Saw him, and saw Tubeway Army, and then subsequently Gary Newman several times in the early 80s, and he certainly put on a good show. The next album's also been mentioned, Boomtown Rats, Fine Art of Surfacing. I could pick almost any track off the album, but I'm going to go with the single I Don't Like Mondays, which got to number 1 over here. Brilliant piano sound to it, pianos by Johnny Fingers. It's a great pop song. It's a very uplifting song, but a very depressing and very sad story that sits behind it. But certainly for me, probably, along with Rat Trap, my favourite Boomtown Rats song. So that then brings me to the top 5. I'm going to go with a song off this album, The Police, and I'm going to go with the opener, Message in a Bottle. I just absolutely adore The Police and the first 2 albums. I think this one, Regatta de Blanc, is the better of the best album they brought out. And even now, I love pogoing to Message in a Bottle. So it's a great song and brings back lots of memories. I'm now going to go with a song off Tom Petty, Damn the Torpedoes. Again, I could have picked quite a few songs off this, but I'm going to go with the opener again, Refugee, which I just think such a great song. Got a lovely sort of, the way it builds and the way it kicks in is so good. So that's not my number 4. Number 3, the album's been mentioned before, The Jam, but I'm going to go with the song Eton Rifles. Big hit in the UK, got to number 3. Well, I don't know. Going Underground, which came out a year later, is probably my favourite Jam song, but that's very close second. For a long time, I had that as my ringtone, the opening riff on that as my ringtone on my phone. It's not anymore, but it was for a long time. Number 2, I'm going to go with Cheap Trick. I'll Be With You Tonight off the Dream Police album. My favourite Cheap Trick song. And probably almost any other year would have been my favourite song of that particular year. I think it's fantastic song. But unfortunately for that particular record, Dream Police and I'll Be With You Tonight, this album came out in '79. And this is not only my favourite AC/DC album, it's probably my favourite album of all time. And on it is my favourite AC/DC track of all time, which is Touch Too Much. So my number 1 of 1979 is Touch Too Much by AC/DC. And then a few honourable mentions. I've also got Waiting for an Alibi by Thin Lizzy, No Class by Motorhead, Hersham Boys by Sham 69, Babylon Burning by The Ruts, Oliver's Army by Elvis Costello. I had the Soundhouse tapes, which is why I had it to hand. Also, and then lastly, I Want to Be Your Boyfriend by the Rubinoos. So those are my honourable mentions.
Very cool. Touch Too Much is my favorite AC/DC song too.
Well, there you go.
All right. Well, all right. Not spoiling myself yet, but Parish absolutely just destroyed my theme. Thanks, Parish. All right. Let's go to Tim. I'll reveal it here in a minute because it's kind of funny. But Tim, tell us about your favorite songs from 1979.
Okay, thanks everybody. And yeah, like Kevin said, I sat in on that episode, 5 favorite songs from my birth year, which is 1974. But I do remember Kevin being on there, so that'd have been 5 and 79. So I don't remember any of these from when they were new. And these aren't really in any particular order, and they're not particularly deep. There's a lot of singles here, but sometimes they're singles for a reason because they're great songs. I got to keep it appropriately Canadian, appropriately Eastern Canadian. April Wine, I Like to Rock. It's just a simple hard rock anthem. I don't know what version is actually on this, but I prefer the extended version with a little bit more guitar in it. There's an extended section that's on one of their compilations. I'm not sure why. There's 2 different versions of it, but anyway. Next one, I mean, it's an obvious one, but I just think that for a cover song, they captured it so perfectly. I got to go with Rainbow Since You've Been Gone. I mean, I remember hearing this on, anybody remembers when they used to have pirate radio syndicated. I think Lon Friend was the host of it. And I remember them playing that and not saying who it was, which used to bug me because I'm like, that's a great song. Who is that? And then I've got the Alcatraz Live Sentence album. And of course, that's on there. I'm like, oh, that's not by Alcatraz, but at least it told me what the song was called. Anyway, that's my next choice. Again, it's single and probably their best known song, but it's an amazing song. Max Webster, Paradise Skies. It packs a lot into a relatively short length. It's got one of my favorite Kim Mitchell solos. Like a lot of his solos, it needs to be louder in the mix because he is just shredding at one point during that song. But it's a great song, great chorus. You just want to sing along. It's a summertime song. A lot of songs in this album are summertime songs, but I had to go with Paradise Skies. Keeping it Canadian, Triumph, Lay It on the Line. I've been hearing this on the radio a lot. I've always loved it. And from the Just a Game album. My personal favorite Southern rock band, the title song from 38 Special, Rockin' Into the Night. The sound that would sort of define rock radio for the next 3 or 4 years. From the pen of Jim Peterick and Frankie Sullivan. So it's basically a Survivor song. 38 Special made it their first hit. An album that I always love to see mentioned, and it's been mentioned a couple of times already. I have been on this show arguing this is my favorite Aerosmith album, Night in the Ruts. And I got to go with No Surprise. It's just a perfect little rock and roll song. I love all the changes in it. I think that Tom Kiefer from Cinderella was listening very hard because I think he took the riff from this and turned it into Gypsy Road. And I love this whole album. I love Bone to Bone. I love 3 Mile Smile. I love Chiquita. I just think it's an amazing album that gets a bad rap and it needs to be revisited. And hopefully it is at some point. This album has been mentioned too. It's one of my favorite Kiss albums. I'm going to go with the song X-Ray Eyes. I think it is one of Gene Simmons' best vocals. I think his vocals were actually getting really good around this point. I always point to this song and then a song on Unmasked called Naked City. It's just well sung. He's not doing his growling thing. It's just really, really well sung. You know, I mean, he's never be as good a singer as Paul was, but I think he sounds really good in that song, and it's super catchy. Whoa. And then my phone dropped. All right. Sorry to scare everybody there. Next one is an album that's been mentioned, and it's a really obvious song, but it was a hit for a reason. I got to go with Dream Police. I mean, it's just a great little pop rock song. I've always liked it. Everything about it, you know, the Rick Nielsen's creepy spoken part in it, you know, the guitar solo, if you want to call it that, but it's so super catchy. So that's that one. I got a couple more. I love the fact this song, not only has this album been mentioned twice, but this song has been mentioned twice. Carouselambra. What a drum workout this is. And I love the fact that it's slightly progressive. I think that's why this is possibly my favorite Zeppelin album, because it's different. It makes me wonder what might have been. But yeah, Carouselambra, it's an epic song. I love all the changes. I mean, Robert Plant's vocals are quite buried, especially on this song. I've read the lyrics. I have no idea what he's talking about, but I think it's a cool song. But the drums just sound amazing on here, and I love the keyboards, John Paul Jones keyboards. And finally, one of my favorite progressive bands, Kansas, from the Monolith album, and I'm going with the opening track, On the Other Side. Don't really have any honorable mentions, but there's a song I do want to mention just because I think it's a really cool song, and that is May the Sun Shine by Nazareth.
Okay, cool. Wicked. Nice job. Wow. A lot of variety. So let's hear that theme, Reed.
All right. So 1979 contains some of the most iconic #1 hits of all time, and you all avoided them. No one mentioned any of the #1 hits from 1979 until we got to Parish. Matt, you actually included one, but it wasn't the #1 hit in the United States. Do you know which song that was?
Our Friends Electric.
Our Friends Electric, that's right. So Parish finally included several songs that were #1 hits in the UK. Nobody included any of the #1 hits from the United States. I decided to take a completely different tack on this panel. So I was around in 1979. I was 11 years old. It's just ever so slightly too early for me to have been an active music listener. I was very aware of music, but I was just passively absorbing whatever was going on at the time. So I went back and compiled my 11-year-old self's favorite tracks from 1979. And you'll notice that there are no heavy metal because this was what was on the radio. So these are songs, music was everywhere in 1979. It was huge. So, you know, you would hear it. I would go to the pool and the Teenage Lifeguards were playing it, or you'd hear it at the skating, come on, I was 11 years old. You'd hear it at the skating rink or at Pizza Hut on the jukebox. You'd hear it in people's cars. There's just music everywhere, and you hear the same songs over and over again. And these are the songs that I wanted to hear most. They are in chronological order of when they're released, starting with Blondie, Heart of Glass. Still an iconic Blondie song. Her voice is so beautiful. It just has those incredible vocal hooks. Debbie Harry's such a beautiful woman. I remember seeing her on TV, and I was just so in love with her. Of course, I thought she was named Blondie. They never say, and here's Debbie Harry. So, but I loved that song. I was always very happy to hear it. #2, probably my favorite Cheap Trick song, the version of I Want You to Want Me from Live at Budokan. I hate the album version of this song. I think it's completely anemic, it's pointless, and it made me not listen to Cheap Trick for years from the way they ruined my favorite Cheap Trick song by putting it down on an album. But the live version is amazing. It's a study in playing guitar for the song. It's got these simple, catchy licks that are exactly what it needs. Robin Zander's vocal sounds great with the audience participation. Cry, cry, cry. which, by the way, I think they added that because the Japanese are famous for not speaking during concerts. If you're playing, they just stand there politely, and then they participate between songs. So I think that studio trickery can't prove it. Number 3, the B-52s, Rock Lobster. This song was like a new wave bomb going off. And I remember riding in the car with my parents, and this was the first thing that my father goes, is this even music? What is this? What am I listening to? And it wasn't that he didn't like rock. My dad never liked rock, ever. He didn't like rock. He didn't like popular music. He was literally befuddled as to how somebody could put this out and call it music. And I knew that that made it special. And yeah, the song is dumb as hell, but it's also incredibly catchy. And you can still just hear the women doing the weird little background vocals. I loved that song. Number 4, probably the 800-pound gorilla of 1979, The Knack with My Sharona. Still my favorite Knack song. Peter Kerr, who was supposed to be with us, and I'm sad he was not, because he got to interview Miles Prescott, I think, from The Knack. And they talked about My Sharona. I love this song. It's my favorite song from The Knack. It's so catchy. And I remember that for some reason, parents hated this song. Now, I was 11. I was too young to understand the sexual politics of this song. But I knew that adults didn't like it. And that made it naughty and extra fun, right? The next song, Electric Light Orchestra, Don't Bring Me Down. Easily the catchiest thing the Electric Light Orchestra ever recorded, even though it's primarily known for a lyric that everybody misquotes. The man is not saying Bruce. It's not a person's name. It's actually saying Groose with a G. It's a word he made up. It doesn't mean anything. But again, very catchy, lots of vocal hooks. I think if you look at 1979, it was a year for catchy vocal hook songs to be number 1. The next song, wow, in 1979, you could not escape this damn song anywhere. The Charlie Daniels Band, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. This song had an enormous impact on popular culture. The man was on every TV show. He was on every talk show. They made at least one made-for-TV animated movie based entirely on this song. It was, like I said, it was ubiquitous. And I don't even know if he's still alive, but I had a friend in college in the 80s who was going to see Charlie Daniels, and he was still basically touring this one song. It was all he would ever be known for in wider pop culture. After that, we moved to Gary Numan's Cars. I did not listen to a lot of Gary Numan. Honestly, I bought the album that Cars is on, and I don't really like anything else he did. I kind of dip my toe into synth pop once in a while to see if maybe my tastes have changed. They have not. But I love Cars. It's an incredibly catchy song. It's so krautrock, and yet it's British. I love Cars, so why not? And yes, I think his version is infinitely preferable to the Pointless Fear Factory remake of it. Next song that's already been mentioned, but Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Refugee, probably the most muscular song Tom Petty ever released as a single. I just loved that song. And here's one that it's another novelty song, but you couldn't escape it back in the day. The man went by the name of M, and that song was Pop Music. Again, so catchy. It was such a stupid song, but it was so catchy. And even in my junior high, you could just walk down the hall and go, talk about, and somebody would yell back, pop music. It was everywhere. We all just loved these songs, right? And finally, the crowning achievement of 1979. This would have been my number 1, even if it wasn't the last on the timeline. And that is Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. This is one, again, you could not escape this. Everywhere you went that was playing music, you would hear Another Brick in the Wall. I had no idea what British public school was like. I didn't really understand the themes. I didn't own the album. But any kid in the school system is going to sympathize with the idea that the school system is evil and is there to oppress you. It has that funereal singing and that wonderful David Gilmour guitar that even as an 11-year-old, I was like, oh, listen to that guitar solo. It's so good. And it's a song that I don't particularly like the album, The Wall. I find it depressing as hell. But this one song is just so good, and I carry it with me everywhere. It may be my all-time favorite Pink Floyd product of any sort. So there you go. That's 11-year-old Reed's top 10 from 1979. And I can't believe how few of those songs anybody else ever mentioned.
Yeah. Nice job.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so that's about an hour on our top 10 songs of 1979. So I think we're just going to cut it off there. Thank you for spending time with us today, everybody. Thank you for joining in on the panel. It was a lot of fun. If this is your first time watching the Contrarians, we put up a lot of videos. Don't know what you're waiting for. Go check them out. We like to talk about music. We pick a lot of albums that other people don't listen to unless you're us. It's mostly hard rock, but new wave, some post-punk, everything else gets thrown in now and then. Check out the Patreon. It's a great community. And we will see you again on another show very soon. Everybody,
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
for showing up.
Very cool. Thanks. See ya.